breaking India. Okay, so you've identified these are the problems. If this continues, what happens?
Well, if this continues, in the best case scenario for India,
In the worst case.
no, I'll give you all the cases. I'll give you all the cases. So I'll start with the best case scenario. Most economists in India agree that India has lost up to 2%, 1 to 2% annual GDP growth rate since independence, only due to the amount of money spent fighting the Kashmir problem, Jammu and Kashmir problem, and Northeast. Now, if you take 2% compounded annually over 60 years, it's more than 100%. So if the GDP is $1 trillion, it means it could have been $2 trillion if that asset were not being depleted. So in the best case, if more insurrections start, even if the patient doesn't die, a large part of his immune system is being taken up, is being depleted, a lot of the prana is being depleted of the nation, fighting these battles internally. It's like if you have a lot of wounds, a lot of inflammation, a lot of infections, then your body is using up a lot of its immunity just to fight. And even though you're alive, you're not as healthy and strong as you would be. So that's the best case scenario. The little worse than that is a scenario that India begins to see movements that in a time of crisis, could be a war with some external countries, may become serious problems, civil war type problems could happen in India. Because my concern is that China is not going to be an easy one for India to deal with, and they're going to use Pakistan as a sort of outsourced militia to fight do their dirty work. And China is very interested in India's northern waters. The Nepal waters are what come to the Ganga. Most of the Ganga comes from there, the water-wise, even though it originates in Gangotri, but the water comes from there. And then the waters of Bhutan and the Arunachal and northeast, they feed the Ganga and they feed the Brahmaputra. And the Indus already, through Kashmir is a disputed territory. So all the mountains of India, northern mountains of India, are the water source of India. And that's where the disputes lie. And the technology exists with China to capture this water and to be able to pipe it to the north, into China. Just like California's water comes from 1,000 miles away, the technology exists to take all this water, and it would double China's water supply and double their irrigation. It would be a big thing for them, and they would love to do that. So I don't think this is a very trivial issue. This border thing with China is not going to go away. It hasn't gone away, and they are in fact really funding Pakistan, giving them weapons. They gave them some 50 fighter jets recently, big advanced fighter jets. And so they'll use Pakistan as sort of to do all this military work for them. I'm not saying that China itself will directly attack. And if Pakistan could get more dangerous with the Taliban taking over and with nukes and all those things, and China kind of feeding it just to keep them away from creating trouble with China, they might push them to create trouble with India. So I think this is going to become a serious matter. And the three big civilizations are each having a stake in India. The Islamic civilization has its grassroots movements in India that they would like to incite and keep on their side. So far they haven't been successful, but you never know. You have to at least think of that scenario. And then the Maoist movements in India, which are in about 30% of all districts of India, have a Maoist movement, according to the Indian government, Indian police own statement. These are linked with Nepal, and Nepal is getting closer to China. So there is a China kind of a presence indirectly through these movements. And then there is a Christian identity, all these Christian identity movements that are starting. So as you get to more and more worse stage, in scenarios, then you have to imagine scenarios where just one of these groups begins to start getting activated in a very militant way. It's no longer just a drain on 2% of GDP, but it becomes an actual physical combat. And then one such combat may trigger another one, because if one nexus somewhere in the world is having its, taking a bite out of India, say in the northeast or Kashmir or in the heartland, the Maoists, then other nexuses will say, why are we going to just sit there and do nothing? We also want to get a piece of it. So it's a huge, giant thing which may be up for grabs. India faces that kind of an issue. And when you look at the positive forces, which are there also, huge positive forces. A good growth of the economy would be positive to keep the nation together, a common sense of identity, a good education system, these kind of things are nation building, So the positive forces, which are called centripetal, they bring the parts together and make them cohesive, are also very good. And the centrifugal forces, which are the ones that make the parts fly apart from each other, are becoming strong also. So the balance is currently held in favor of the nation staying together. Yeah? But the point is, if these forces that are hostile continue, how much bleeding of the economy, how much bleeding of identity can go on before it's too much to manage. And that could create problems for India's integrity. If you look at demographic projections, Hindus are shrinking demographically. And certain pockets, Hindus are in minority. And you cannot go to Nagaland even on the Independence Day, raise the flag without an armed guard around you. And much of the Northeast is becoming like that. There's a huge overflow of Bangladeshis into various places in that region. So if you look at the decline of the dharmic civilizations and combine it with the fact that people who you would think are Hindu have got a Hindu name and they may be doing puja, they're kind of nominal Hindus in the sense that they don't want to claim it as an identity, and they will not actually fight for it or stick their neck out. They are kind of living in a world where they would rather not be involved in anything, and they are very complacent. So if you look at the fact that hardly maybe 20-25% of the people who are Hindu are actually willing to stick their neck out. So when you look at that, then you cannot be complacent and think that we got a strong majority, because effective portion of that majority that will actually be there to fight a cause is not that great. And then there is institutional decays. The government is pampering some of these separatist type people. The head of the National Integration Council is named in this book. He's appointed the head of the Integration of India Minorities Council. He comes to the United States and gives testimony to the US Commission against India, to put India on the embargo, have embargoes against India on human rights. So he's double-faced. In India, he's supposed to be, somebody who's bringing minorities together, but then he's also somehow incentivized to go and talk against the country as an official of India doing that. So this is happening in broad daylight in India. So these are not simple things for any responsible Indian to sort of ignore. These are some of the scenarios, and I don't want to give only worst case scenario, I don't want to give a scary scenario, I'm not talking there's a conspiracy theory, I'm saying it's like a doctor says that I will tell you your risk factors. I will tell you these are your risk factors, I look at all your organs, all the levels of various diagnostics I've done, and I'll tell you that you've got this risk and that risk and that risk. Now hopefully these things won't flare up, but they might. So you're better off knowing about it so you can do something about it, but I'm not trying to predict that you'll be dead in this many years or whatever. Yeah. So I'm not making any prediction, but I'm doing a stress test on India's health as a nation. And I'm saying that these are stress factors, the factors that I'm pointing out.
My question is, first of all, I'm glad that I got a chance to hear you, and I completely agree with you. My question might sound opposing, even though it's not. You said that breaking India. Do you feel that the government also sees that? Because as a politician, my job is to rule as many people as possible. So if you think it's going to start to break, isn't that a bad thing for the government as well?
Okay, that's a good question. There is a optimization of a local interest, narrow selfish interest. Yeah. So I'm working in a big company, in a big organization, but I'm corrupt because it's maximizing my interest. It'll bring the company down, long term, but short term, my own interest is maximized. So I'm maximizing in the same by using this analogy. A politician is maximizing his vote bank, which may fragment India, but will get him elected. So people who play the vote bank politics, while they are hurting India's unity because they're making one group against another group, they're creating a sense of victimhood, they want more quotas and jobs for this group and knock down that group. This infighting is splintering the country. But the guy who gets to be the boss of that group can get a seat at the table in a corrupt government. He can get one ministry, or he can get appointed, his cousin can get appointed, so he can get a few $1 billion off in a Swiss bank. So the corruption has given huge incentives to get a seat at the table politically, and people have to do all kinds of identity warfare to get that seat. So the identity warfare of Indians versus Indians is exacerbated by this kind of political system. A politician who's thinking very long term and thinking for the whole nation would be like you're saying. He would say that the unity of this great country is more important for me, and I shouldn't worry about, you know, my little community or my little identity. But unfortunately, that myopia is there in a lot of cases.
I hope people like you multiply and grow in strength also. Anyway, my question is, or comment, with China being communist and Pakistan being terrorist, and both are posing imminent threat to West and the United States, what is the point? Are they not being foolish in their effort? For example, right wing you said, in supporting breaking up of India?
So, the last chapter of this book, that's exactly my point that I'm making, that one of the things I want the book to do is to bring to the attention of US policymakers that they should change their policy. Rather than supporting these faith-based initiatives to go and dilute or weaken India's spine, they should actually ban all that, because they should build up India. India as a friend. They should strengthen India. US policy should recognize that anything they do which disrupts the Dharmic civilization as the backbone of India, anything that disrupts that, will play into the hands of China and Pakistan, which is US's enemy in the long run. China-Pakistan axis is the enemy. And we have to use this book to go to our congressmen, and to go to our think tanks, and go to our media, and make exactly this argument. In fact, if somebody asks me, sometimes people have asked me, what's the one thing you would like to do, you would like to see changed as a result of the book? And I would say it's exactly this. I would like to use this book, I would like to see it create a new debate within the US policymakers towards India, and to see the negative effect on US-India friendship and US foreign policy interests, negative effect of human rights interventions, all these Dalit, Dravidian, Christian interventions and saving the people, converting them, all of that. US should stop those activities. I feel that Americans are very intelligent if you educate them, they understand their own interests, but we have not done a good job of educating them. We have not done a good job. And I feel that the Indian government, I'm not sure, is on this wavelength right now. They also have got a lot of minority chips to play, people to keep happy. So I don't think the Indian government is necessarily going to go to the United States and say, stop this intervention, because there's certain forces within India itself that are getting benefit out of it. They're getting grants, they're getting money, they're getting patronage. And so, is it the West that is intervening, or is it Indians that are inviting and pulling them in? Both. And that's the complexity.